beautiful soul. Welcome to the edition of the Divine Soul Awakening. Oh, I forgot which order we're actually starting here. So we are a group of psychics, spiritual mediums coming together to help everyone awaken, align to your higher selves, and soul purpose while lifting up humanity. And I'm super excited about today's show where we are talking about the awakening process of men and the masculine side of things. Now, the thing that we've always seen is that we've been welcomed into this world by predominantly a female energy area. And as the masculine divine is starting to find their balance, more men are awakening. And we've brought in a few of our special guests. We have some men at the bottom panel here to come in and join us and share their experience. And welcome everybody.
Thank you.
Wow. Good to be here. Hey, everybody.
So glad to have everyone here. Super excited. I know Mike Borgh has been the person that actually helped me awaken probably, I don't know, a long time ago because he's been doing this for like 20 years plus. Matt and Jim, we all kind of grew up in the world with Kristen Davies courses and whatnot. And that's really it. Anything you guys want to say before we get started?
I'll do it as we go.
Awesome.
The most important word for me in this topic is self-compassion. That's the main thing that I go to every day.
Love that. Well, let's hear from our first guest here. So Mike Borgh, he has his practice. I've known Mike when Mike was an energy healer for over 20 years, and I've been seeing him for quite some time when he was living here in Toronto. And at that point, Mike was pretty closed off, and he was a man's man. Anytime we'd have the discussion, he'd do the energy work, but he was very much a man's man. But then one day, Mike pretty much just said, "F it, I'm done with that," and he opened himself up to his true self. And I remember receiving my first hug from this man, and it woke me up. And he allowed me to find love in my heart. So Mike, welcome to the panel.
Well, thank you. It's I remember that hug very much, and it was a moment of big transition in my life at that point that brought me to that awareness, and I'll happily share that. So, for me, my journey actually started back when I was more as a teenager, and I was one of those kids that was just naturally born feeling energy, and I never really thought anything about it. I thought that's what everybody felt and experienced until I was about 15 or 16, and then I was introduced to the idea and the concept of energy, or chi, officially. And I met a gentleman who was doing Tai Chi at the time, and he showed me a few breathing techniques and a few exercises on how to harness that energy. And from that moment on, everything just became much more intense, much more concentrated, and gave me an opportunity to actually learn how to work with that. Then through all my years of training and experience, I've taken about 60 different modalities in energy and spiritual sort of modalities. And those started to open me up more and more. But the biggest turning point for me was actually when I went through a divorce with my ex-wife. And was the first time in my life that I actually was able to hear all those traits or aspects about me that I refused to admit were real. And one of the biggest ones was me being a very selfish man. And as Con explained before, I was very much like, no, I'm a man. I'm hard-edged, don't express emotion. But when I actually heard and allowed that shift within myself around selfishness and selfish behaviors, I began to uncover the deeper root of where all that came from in my life. That started to open my heart. Then I had an experience in a conference where I actually had a full Kundalini awakening and became one with the divine in that moment. And it was very, very soon after that I gave you that hug, Con, and everything changed for both of us. And it was a truly life-changing experience.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, I remember that hug very much so. And And I remember asking you the question, how do you make your decisions? And that was the first time you said, I go into my heart, and I go into my heart and I feel my heart and I get the answer from my heart. And, at that point, when I wasn't really awoken yet, I understood what being in your heart meant on a technical level, but not until I actually experienced it at this level that, opening the heart, really what it means to live in your heart and get the answers from your heart, and avoid all that chatter that's in the mind. And that was a huge plus for me.
That was the same experience I had. And, taking the training I had and doing the work I was doing, I had that belief that I was a heart open man doing my work from the heart. But in reality, I wasn't. I was still very much in the head, very much running off of ego and worried about what people thought of me and how I presented myself. Like Con said, there's just one day I just said, you know what? It's not worth my time and energy. I'm wasting so much time and energy focused on things that really aren't important and aren't who I authentically am. And, part of my wife and I moving here to New Brunswick was that ability for us to drop all those labels and ideas of what other people had about who I was, and allowed me to just step into my authentic truth from the get-go. And it's amazing when you live from your authentic place that the people around you are forced to live in their authenticity as well. And the people who aren't, there's no time or space for them in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that. Welcome, Doc. Doc is one of our other panel members here.
Hi, Doc. You're the man.
I think your clocks have moved forward. That's why I got the time wrong. So apologies for the delay.
That's right. That's right. I think your clocks change this weekend, isn't it? Coming up?
Oh, now you tell me. Right. Okay. Thanks.
That's beautiful. So, Mike, how are you using this energy work now? What are you doing with it?
Am I using what? Sorry.
How are you using this energy work, this awakening, this shift? Like, how are you using it to your advantage now?
Well, I'd say that's when I was in Ontario, my practice was mostly massage therapy. So when I moved here, I retired from massage therapy and stepped full on into doing the energy work, because that's really where my passion is. So through all my training and experience, I really have come to understand that energy is nothing more than a language. And it's a language that majority people have forgotten. But through my years of training and experience, I've learned that language of energy and how to interact and communicate with it on many levels. So everybody's life story is actually encoded in the cells and DNA of our body as energetic vibration or energetic information. Very similar to how we all have MP3 files on our computer or on our phone that play our favorite piece of music. All of our life experience is actually filtered through these stored memories and vibrations in the cells and DNA of our body. Mm-hmm. So my role as I consider myself an energy shift facilitator. So that's really all I do, is I facilitate the shifting of energies that don't support the person and bring them into a frequency or vibration that actually allows that person to understand their own limitations and begin to create the life that they want, whether it be for health reasons, emotional release, or just really to create the life that they've always dreamed of. So again, I hold space. I watch things shift. I watch miracles happen every single day, and to me, that's one of the most beautiful things for me in my position, is to just have that gift of watching miracles happen.
Love that. Love that. We're going to be circling back with a lot more questions here, but I want to start introducing our other teammates here, other men that we've invited here. And Matt, I'm coming to you now. And Matt, we kind of grew up together. And when we got into our first course at Kristen Davies, I immediately felt a bond with you. And as I got to stay in contact with this guy. And I remember we've been kind of buds and chatting and sharing our experiences, that some things that we just couldn't share with other people, especially women. we weren't able to share some of our more embarrassing moments that was happening down there, right? So
Yeah, well, I see Khan as kind of the wise sensei, and I'm like the Karate Kid, and hey, he's trying to teach me like how to hold my own. Yeah, it's interesting, like male bonding. Male bonding is different than female bonding, and then females, they get annoyed when we try to male bond with them, because male bonding is like fixing things, and we want to figure it out, and we don't want to just sit around and talk about our feelings. But those feelings inside us, they build up, and I had no idea, because I was kind of becoming indifferent to my own feelings, because there was suffering in me, and I was ignoring my feelings and ignoring the feelings of other people, but they don't go away. So it's like, you have to love yourself so that they don't build up. And when you love yourself, then you can start loving other people more, and you have more to give. But with me, I didn't feel anything until I was 19. And then when I was in Kristen Davies' course, I started feeling like energies around me, and I started feeling like these burning cords and chains, and like burning spirals coming out of me. And they were like thought forms that I've created. And it's just a matter of loving myself and transmuting, changing my mindset. Is like, you're changing the energy, and it happens over time. So during the day, I always I have to do, I say I send back all energy that is not my own or my highest good back to its source, transmuted and pure. And I call back all my own energy that I've sent forth, transmuted and pure. And doing that helps me to center myself, and also go outside and ground myself, because I work with a lot of difficult people. And when you ground yourself, you're like a tree. And if they're coming at you with like the energy of kind of like an animal, they're trying to make other animals scurry around, and you're grounded to Gaia like a tree. And they're not able to easily phase you like they can. And it's what's amazing is some people, they have they have advantages they don't even know, and they're sometimes they misuse those gifts, and it's it confuses us, and we get upset and angry. But that everything is within us, and once you start loving yourself and releasing that, they start changing their behavior, because they're responding. It's like a puppet show. They're responding to your energy. And when you start going up and ascending, people around you, they start changing what they're doing, because they're responding to your energy, and they don't know it yet. And some of these people, you're opening up a path for them. And that's why it's so important. Each one of us, where we live, we're transmuting things for other people around us. And, it's in ways we know, and in ways we could never know.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. And specifically, what I tell most of my clients is the best thing you can do for the people around you and the society you live in is to just be yourself. I do more good just being myself, walking down the street, because me holding that vibration and holding that energy, especially in the love vibration, is having that ripple effect of change throughout my environment, and is affecting many more people than when I just do one-on-one sessions. So we really need to just be in that vibration of love, and that's what's going to change the world around us.
Yeah, I think with me, I found it easier to monitor my thoughts, and release thoughts that don't serve me. But overall, I check my mood. I monitor my mood. So if my mood changes, that's kind of like it's an energy that's coming from me or somewhere else, and it's corresponding to what's stored in me. It's like a battery, and discharging different things, that like discharging the low vibrational stuff, the negative stuff, and charging it with positive energy. So, when I feel a mood of like frustration or sadness or anger or impatience, I try to, breathe it out and transmute that with love. And William Michael Forbes is the guy who originally taught me that.
Yeah, I got the same thing with when we went to Kristen Davies' course, is taking all of that stuff and transmuting it into the light. Any kind of fears or worries. There's no worries about anything. Anger, no. It's all God. And she got, there's other ways of doing it, the red root. It's all about transmuting it into the light. I thought that to me was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Con, we can't hear you, Con.
Ooh, thank you for saying that.
It wasn't muted, so I was confused.
It was muted on the microphone itself, so thanks. As I muted myself. Yeah, thanks for saying that. I know we have our first question, but I do want to say about that transmuting part. So I know Kristen Davies began with starting and saying, transmute it and give it to your angels or put it into a gold box, which was one way, but that never really resonated with me until I actually did the work myself and started releasing it. And then I know Mike, he would help me in releasing a lot of those trapped emotions as well, and has a bunch of his own methods of releasing trapped emotions that are within someone else or within your own self. I'd love to hear on that, Mike.
Yeah, well, like I said before, I've been trained in many different modalities, and actually where I got the biggest breakthrough in my work is when I actually dropped all those labels of all those techniques I learned and just learned to step into me and be present to what that person needed. So that's what I do when I do my one-on-one sessions, is I'm able to recognize those stagnant energies or vibrations that are stuck in somebody's body that are manifesting as various symptoms, whether it be a physical pain or a mental issue or any other issue that's going on in their life. And by recognizing those vibrations, and sometimes that's all it takes, is just to recognize that it's there. And it's almost like shining a light on it, and then it just disappears because now it's been seen and it's been discovered. I also do a lot of work sometimes to pull energies out of the body that don't belong there. And as I pull those energies out, that's when I'm doing that, transmuting it into, as you say, into light. I like to use the word, I transmute it into unlimited potential or back to the divine. And then I replace that energy that was pulled out. Once it's been transmuted, I then put that back into the body, so then they can use that energy and that vibration of unlimited potential to create the experience that they actually want in their life.
Love that. I know when I do a one-on-one emotional releases for people, and I'm just guiding them, I tune into their energies and just kind of feel what to say, what they need to say to themselves, and just help them guide themselves. And it seems that there's so many different ways of doing this. So Rachel, I see we have a question here. Let's do this question, and then we're going to jump to Jim.
Yeah. So Mary is saying her sons and their father have struggled all their lives, and she wants to rescue them, but she can't without hurting herself. Any insight on her situation is appreciated.
My first suggestion is that it's not your job to fix them. And the more energy and the more focus you put on trying to fix a situation, again, as you say, you're hurting yourself. So the best thing you can do is to set those boundaries that you need in order to create that best life you can for yourself in the situation, and enforce those boundaries. It's up to your son and your father, or your husband, sorry, to first off want to do the work and want to admit that they need to do that work and to make that change. All you can do is make a suggestion and leave it up to them. And we can't heal or fix anybody else. All we can do is hold space and allow them to step into what it is that they truly are meant to do and be.
Oh, well said, Brother Mike. That's blowing my mind.
Yeah. And that really is. Go ahead, Doc.
I would say, I mean, this is just from my experience. I don't know whether it's the right thing or not, Marianne. as ever, these things are divine timing for anybody to awake at the time when they are supposed to, or to understand things when they're supposed to. And I mean, personally, I was very skeptical about all this stuff for many years, and my wife, bless her, was very patient. Either that, or she turned her hearing aid down so she wouldn't hear it. But I think the main thing is to always leave a door or a window open. So something like, when you're ready to talk about this, come and talk to me. Or when you feel that this is what you'd want to explore, come and talk to me. And then periodically just remind them. I hesitate to say repetitive comments sound a bit like nagging, but nevertheless, just remind them every once in a while, because I'm sure the chaps will agree. Repetitive reminders do get your back up and turn off and make you very, very tone deaf to suggestions. So just gentle nudging every once in a while, and if you observe a moment of introspection or of thought or of just a different way of thinking, then maybe that might be the opportunity. I have to say that the chaps have mentioned earlier on that, I mean, ladies are fine, please forgive me, but generally speaking, you talk around a table or when you're eating or when there's a coffee morning or something of that nature. Blokes do things when they're doing things like playing snooker or darts or downing one of several beers, but maybe that's not a good idea. So try to catch them doing something, and then ask them, and they might actually disengage their brain from their jaw and actually say what they're thinking. You never know.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Thomas. But yeah, and men, we hate hearing something twice. Like when we've been told something, we remember it and we know that we didn't do it, and then we get mad when it's pointed out.
Sorry, Matt. What did you say again? Just But the other thing that's sometimes helpful, and just a thought, it may not be possible with the father of your sons, because he may not be necessarily around a lot, but when they're doing something for you or with you, like gardening or maybe something of that nature, then that might be a time just to see and just and then as they sort of toddle along and they do stuff, and then their big brain might engage because they're not sat on it, and so hopefully that might do the trick. So
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's like with me, with my colleagues and uncle and stuff. I understand them from how we work together, and how they respond to my work and how we deal with other people together. It's like we're doing stuff. There's like a goal or a mission. We're trying to accomplish that mission.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, that's my halfpence worth. Over to you, Con.
Love that, Doc. Great point, and thanks for saying that. And my aspect of this as well is that on top of what Mike was saying, it's not your job to do it. But what you can do is release and observe the emotions that are showing up in your own body. And as you release that attachment in yourself, you're actually going to be helping them as well. So look at actually releasing it in yourself, and look at how those emotions are showing up in yourself. Observe it, give it love, release it. That would be my suggestion on there. And to follow up on Doc, what we can do is just plant the seed. Because guys, we go in our cave and then we just process, and the mind starts going. So it's like the seed's been planted. Let us sit there and process in silence for a bit, and just know that you're there. And the best thing, through a man through their stomach, make us something to eat. Just have it sitting there without saying anything. We can smell it wafting, and we start coming out of our cave bit by bit.
It reminds me of the phrase, the quickest way to a man's heart is either through his stomach or with a 6-inch knife. Whichever way works, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because it's like in the Middle Ages, we were bonding through battle, and we were going to fight with the king, And then now in modern day, it's like it's much more complicated.
Yeah. Anytime that you can, the best way to get to know somebody is through an experience. And that's why, typically even when you have a first date, you go to the movies and you have an experience, you get to share that. And now you have something you've been able to share with each other. And with men, especially, we like a lot of those more physical activities at times that really just sweats and gets the tears out. And in a different way, our aggression, and even just hitting that weight and pushing that extra weight and grunting through it. And that's what's exciting for us.
And we open up to women because we can't open up to other men. I mean, very few men. It's like, but it's like Con and Mike and me and Jim and Doc, we can talk to each other about stuff like that. And it's, there's other men like on a construction site, they won't understand that.
That's right.
At all.
Yeah, that's not happening.
No, you guys pick on each other. You guys like to pick on each other too.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
That's all in love.
In love.
Nap each other with the towel in the locker room. Yeah.
Con was one of the first men that I met that I could actually have those open heart-to-heart talks with and real talks with. And it was actually when I moved here to New Brunswick that I met actually one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. And it's a guy, Rodney. He's a couple years younger than me, but he's the friend in my life that I'd always been searching for. And when we met, it was just that true, authentic connection. And it was kind of strange at first because I never really had a close friend like that where I could be vulnerable and open and cry, but also be able to hold that space to allow him to go through his own process. And it's so important for men to have other men in their life where they can just be real and raw and understand that expressing emotions isn't a bad thing. It's not a weakness.
Yeah.
Really.
Judgment. Yeah. Non-judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite saying is don't mistake weakness for kindness. As the 6th degree black belt that used to do backdoor fighting all the time, I proved that many times. And then once I had my awakening, I didn't have to prove that anymore. That was big. And speaking about men's men, here's Jim. Welcome, Jim, to the family. Love to hear your story, brother.
Well, for me, it all started, I think, as a teenager too, where I remember having some like health problems with runny nose and congestion and trying to go to school, and you got the clinics running all day long, and it's like, oh, this is not working. So I went to a doctor, and I remember after, they had nose drops and some prescription stuff. And after a day, I'm like, that's not going to happen. And happened, my aunt who lived in Virginia Beach told me about Edgar Casey, and they have a whole center dedicated down for him. He's, I guess what we call today a trans channeler, where he steps aside. He called him Sleeping Prophet, and he would come up with what was wrong with an individual and what they needed to do to get better. And so I went through all that information. I'm like, oh, this stuff is working. And I was hooked. I mean, they got me by curiosity. I was like, the information derived from non-physical, from spirit. As far as I looked at back then, it was all what they called Akashic records. So I figured the answers to almost everything was out there, just in some kind of a book. So, as we went along, there was all kinds of other things he would talk about, like, and I was interested in like Atlantis and the pyramids and what our purpose here is, and those types of questions. So it was all that curiosity and whatever happened to Amelia Earhart and this thing called reincarnation. So back then, all we had were the books. So I just poured through all these books, and to me, it was a hobby, and I just enjoyed it. And I remember in college, I remember in one of my favorite stories was I guess I thought there were spirit guides or something out there, and I set an intention. I says, well, didn't know how all that worked, and I said, well, if anything bad is ready to happen to me, let me know. I think some of you have heard the story before, but it was late night. I was making a trip down. My metabolism was crazy in school. I mean, I'd ran through food like crazy, and it must have been like 11:30 at night. I'm heading toward one of those fast food places to grab 3 hamburgers for a snack. And it was just started to snow on the road. It's just 2-lane road heading to a residential neighborhood, and way in the distance I see a car with lights, and something shoots through me, says that car coming at you is going to go out of control. And I'm like, and I'm having a conversation with myself, which I'm like, okay, this is cool. So as soon as I saw the car start, and I said to myself, talking to myself, I says, I've never seen a car go out of control like that before. So as soon as I saw the car start to wobble, I took my car off the road. Car spun out, went backwards down my lane into the previous intersection. And I'm like, well, that's cool. You know? So I learned many years later, like through Kristen's course afterwards, that might have been a clairaudient thing. But to me, I'm like, still don't know what's going on, but I thought that was interesting. And we did ghost hunting and stuff while I was in college. And then we had some kind of situation with the Ouija board that I think something tried to get into me and freaked out a person that was with me that didn't get into this at all and said, it's inside you. And I said, I probably shouldn't be playing with this anymore. So I put that away. And then many, many years later, I came across someone else. I was talking to them about Casey, and they said, you should check out Bashar. And Bashar is another, he's Paul Anka is not the singer, but he channels again this alien, our first, what he calls himself, first contact specialist from Essassani. And the information coming from him was like, wow, this is fantastic, and again, it's filling in some more details as far as how all this stuff works for me, or for all of us. And Rachel, you like this one too, his spacecraft is parked over Sedona.
Oh, nice.
So it's one of my places I got to go visit, I suppose. Not that you're ever going to see it, but it's still cool that he talks about that. And then that led to like Abraham Hicks is another trans channeler and law of attraction. And what I'm noticing is I'm going through all this, and this is of course accelerating as we get closer to when I saw Kristen's stuff, is there's a pattern. They're all saying the same things. And I'm like, the more I hear about it, the more like, this is the way it is. And then Seth was also the Seth and Jane Roberts. And then I had this interest in Jesus and his story. And I was, watching YouTube videos, which I tell you, YouTube videos are fantastic. I mean, I've learned so much stuff from YouTube videos, not just this stuff, but how to fix a car and things. I mean,
Yes.
It's just amazing. So I'm watching this Jane Robertson. She's channeling Jesus, and I'm listening. I'm like, well, this is consistent with what I've heard before. So I'm like, okay, this makes sense. And then I came across Kristen's videos, and she's live streaming Jesus. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. And I'm like, well, okay, well, I'm not totally sure she's doing it, but I'm like watching and looking, and I'm like, okay, it seems consistent with what everything else I'd seen before. And they're just having like this informal conversations. They're joking with each other. And I'm like, yeah, it's not what I anticipate, what I'd grown up with. It's you think there's good and evil, and you got to be careful, and all those types of things that we've kind of been pre-programmed, we'll say, with. And so so as I'm watching her videos, she in one of the videos, she says, anybody could do it. And I'm like, what? So there's the beginning of the hook. And I'm like, well, I'm into this stuff. I just love this stuff. So I go, well, I'll take the course and see what's happening. And I'm sensing energies. And I'm like, this is so cool.
That's how I was, Jim. I had no idea about channeling. I just saw Kristen do it. I was like, well, if this lady's going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that to me, I'm like, I probably was groggy before, but boy, once you sensed it, it's just like, wow, I couldn't believe. And I'm like this is, and I'm doing different beings, and I'm like, they're coming in differently. So I'm like, okay, I'm not imagining this stuff. It's actually happening. And so I got to say that was like the beginning, and not only that, but all the course and things that have happened subsequently is kind of like, and as Rachel did in one of her card pulls for me, she goes, I couldn't think of a better way of saying it, reprogrammed as far as how I approach things, and don't let the little things bother you, and there's no fears and worries, and it's just fun every day, enjoy every day. And of course it's easier said than done, and so it's a work in progress. But and I also said when she's doing this card pull for me, I says, more than a card pull, I'm like, not a beginner. I'm like, most of the people in that course were not beginners as far as I'm concerned, Matt.
No, they weren't. I was the beginner though.
I'm just like, no, I'm the beginner.
Yes.
So I was just really amazed with the whole group, and and I've got a ways to go, of course, but it's I got the yes and no's, and I got the energy stuff, and I have a really good understanding of how it works. And as I'm listening to all this stuff too, and it's some more funny stuff is during one of the Divine Soul Awakenings, they had a free giveaway, and I'd asked for clarity as far as my new direction, because I've been hearing about new direction. And so, wouldn't you know, I won the 12-month with Martine, and guess what I'm supposed to be doing? So I definitely got some more clarity as far as what my new direction is supposed to be, and then when Khan invited me live on his Friday show, which I thought was really funny. So I asked him afterwards, I go, did my team get you to do that? And he said, 100%. So I'm getting a bunch of clues that this is the direction I'm supposed to go in. And I think it's just a matter of, like so much of us is trying to get people to at least be aware of it. I know it took me a long time, and I can definitely understand why it might take others a while, but if you do feel it, it's the more the merrier, to help spread the word on this. I mean, it only can help the collective. So,
well, I think a big thing is people just need to know that they're not alone and they're not crazy. Because I moved to a really small town in rural New Brunswick, which is actually one of the Bible belts of New Brunswick. And when I opened up my crystal shop and my healing practice here, within the first 2 or 3 weeks, I had about a dozen people just come in just to thank me for opening up, because it was giving them permission to own their abilities and live the life that they've always wanted to live, but have done in the shadows. And by them seeing me as a professional doing this type of work out in the open, this whole town has really shifted in the last 5 years, and more people are stepping into their gifts and sharing them with the world, and it's amazing to see.
There seems to be more people who are into it than I thought, because now that I have an understanding of how it works and I start talking to people, I'm like, wow, they're doing it. There's some who are doing it, but they don't believe it has anything to do with this, but like, though, that's fine. And there's others who can do it but are afraid of it. They're sensitive, they're getting it, but and I'm saying mediumistic wise, but they're just they think it's something evil, and I'm like, okay, so there's just it's a work in progress for a lot of people. But to me, I got to say, this last couple of years has just been like, have everything fall together and have an understanding of how it works. It's very satisfying. It is personally very satisfying. And if others, and Kristen would say the same thing, if you talk to people and they're not into it, that's fine. It's just, it's not their time. And you put a feeler out there, and if that's it, then go on to some other subject like the weather.
Yeah,
whether they're into it or not, though, everybody feels energy. We've all walked into a room where someone's just had a big fight, and you can feel that tension. You can feel the heaviness of that. You're feeling the energy of the emotion of anger, right? So everybody is sensitive to it, but people have a hard time when they have to label it or they have to define it. But everybody's sensitive. Everybody feels energy, just in different ways and at different levels of understanding around it.
Yeah, I want to say, Jim reminded me of when we were in Kristen's courses. The proof is in the pudding. If you want to find out about this stuff, join these courses or come on live, like with Con and Rachel. And there's a process to it, and there's guides that are there to protect you and keep you safe, like Archangel Michael and Goddess Callie and Jesus. And in Kristen's course, I was channeling Jesus one day, and he was like knocking on my head, and it felt exactly like someone knocking on my head. And he was knocking my head because I didn't know how to let him in to my heart, because I was like solar centered and not heart centered. And then at the end of one of Kristen's course, my cat passed away in the middle of the week that week. And Jesus, and so I was on live at the closing of Kristen's course. So it was in a private group. This was not like broadcast out there or anything, but it was me. I seen Kristen on the screen, and I'm sitting here in my office, and Jesus is telling Kristen is that I have a message for Matt. And she said, I have your child. And I was like, what? I don't have no kids. And he's like, your little one. And I was like, I don't understand. And then she said, your kitty cat. It was real time. Like Jesus was reading my mind in real time. So I mean, and once you get to that point, man, it's like smooth sailing. I mean, it's a downhill from there. You're not always questioning what's going on. You're just getting the confirmations and you're getting the messages.
Yep. And I remember when you said that too, Mike, as far as you could see, now that I'm aware of it, I can see spirit, the way it works through people. Mm-hmm. And they might not even be aware of it, but I'm seeing these sequence of events, and I'm like, wow, look at that, how that works. And it's fascinating to me. I just, it's plenty of stories,
Doc, you're going to say something?
What's interesting, and I think this is probably could be applied to everybody, irrespective of gender, is this, that there are, when you look at change in populations, there are different groups of people who are more accepting of change. You've got the people who are already doing it, so the people at the leading edge of stuff, they're already doing all this stuff. There are people who need a bit of education and a bit of guiding, and then they'll get into it. Then there is the lumpen proletariat, or whatever they're called, that need a different technique. And then the people who will never change at all. Okay, now, in terms of getting these ideas out, forget the last group, because they're not going to go there. They'll be kicking and screaming, and they still won't get it. Okay. But the way in which we package this message, or messages, or thoughts, differs from each of the first three groups. The people who already get it, you don't need to tell them. In fact, you can learn from them in many respects.
Yep.
The people that need a bit of guidance are perhaps the ones that will come to us who are already open and understanding. But the lumpen proletariat is the mass population, and they need a different way of getting their message out there. And so if you think of seatbelts, the people who already drove Volvos and drove very slowly wore the seatbelts right at the very beginning. Then there are people who had to be fined or had a penalty on their license. And they're the ones in the lumpen proletariat. But the others who sort of got it was when they saw somebody die from not having seatbelts. So they understood it after a while. And it struck me that each of you chaps, and I'm sure everybody else, has at different stages in their lives been at different parts of this spectrum. And suddenly something happened, a sentinel event happened, where suddenly it just clicked over to another group, and then you realize the door was open, then you went in. And what I would suggest that we consider, and I'm not sure if this is the right answer, is that it's a particular times of change, including bereavement, including new birth of a child or a change in situation, where people are most open to be reflective about their place in life and their sense of being. When we are too comfortable in our lives, in terms of, I'm just toddling along, I'm doing my work, 9 to 5, come home at the weekends, watch the soccer and all that sort of stuff, you have no challenge. There is no friction. And at the end of the day, to my mind, it's the grit in the oyster that makes the pearl. So there needs to be some sort of friction, some sort of change, some sort of nudge in our lives for us to make us think. Mike, you mentioned your divorce. Other people have had bereavements. Matt, with your cat. Jim, it's that almost near-death experience with a car. God forbid, and, but something nudged you. Something nudged you, and equally so, I'm sure everyone in this group and the people who are listening in may have had a sentinel moment which said, "Oh, right, okay, maybe it's something else." And maybe those are the moments where we can perhaps look for an in if we're going to start to talk to people about stuff. And this is just a thought. I'll be happy to listen to what you individually and collectively think, because it's just the way I see it from what you describe it.
And I find it is the words that you use, because when I first started this work, the idea of angels and Jesus and Mother Mary, when I'd hear those names, I would clam right up. It's like, because I was not raised that way. It was, no, you work on yourself. And the idea of being connected, even though I always felt a strong connection with Jesus and Mother Mary, because I visited their home when I was in Turkey as a teenager, and I always had some sort of connection to them, but I never really connected on that spiritual level. And now as I go through this and dissect it more, I realize that all these names are the same. Whether you call it God, Allah, universe, source, spirit, it's all the same. And then we get into even this, whether you call it mediumship, intuition, a gut feeling, it's again the same thing. And as Mike was saying, like, you walk into a room that after an argument, you can feel that tension. And this is the same. That you know that you can say, like, I have a really strong gut feeling. I feel it in my gut. Well, that's intuition. That's connecting to this, and that's letting go and tuning into your gut, your heart, whatever you want to call it. It really is just different words for the same thing.
Yeah, well, here's another way to really look at labeling things like Jesus and Mary and Muhammad and Buddha. If we just look at everything in life as just energy, it's just frequency in different states of vibration. But in order for us to be able to tune into those vibrations, we have to have the right radio station tuned in within us to pick up that information. So I like to use this analogy, and I know all of us here in the talk are old enough to remember dial radios. And when you turn the dial, if you weren't tuned in just right, you got a mixed message or an unclear signal coming through. Most people out there, majority of the population, their bandwidth goes from, say, 88.1 to 99.9. And that's their experience of life, is in that short little bandwidth of space. But as we begin to open up and allow ourselves these different experiences and go through these healing processes, our bandwidth starts to grow. And as our bandwidth starts to grow and expand, that's when we start to pick up other information. That's when we start to tune into our clair senses and our extrasensory abilities. And for some people, they may start channeling. But all they're doing is they've just allowed their vibration to meet the vibration of whatever it is that they are trying to achieve or bring through. So Jesus is just a vibration, and it's a vibration that we all have the potential to tune into. We just have to learn how to tune our vibration high enough to pick up that information.
And that's the biggest lesson I learned, is that not putting these beings on pedestals. It's not a matter of saying one is better than someone else. Even what we're seeing here is not about someone doing this more than others, more open than others. We are all the same, and we are all equal, and we're all brothers and sisters, and all just kind of connected on the same energetic level. And it's just rather how open you are or what abilities you are. But really, there is, once I got rid of the pedestal and realized that we're all the same, and even the story of Master Jesus that was put out there, he was just a regular guy. He was just going through his own spiritual awakening and just kind of saying, like, well, I'm following my intuition. I feel this, I feel that. And once you kind of realize that, it really humanizes the experience that we're going through. And really what we're going through is identical to what the greats have gone through as well. So it's very much identical.
Yeah, it's kind of manly in a way to be fixing your feelings, because Sylvia Martell had a comment that reminded me of this. She said, women admire men for their strength, but they love them for their vulnerability. Well, I was going around ignoring my vulnerability, but I had a crying baby inside me, and that I wasn't listening to. I wasn't addressing it. So it was just always, there in the background, and it was, I was not wanting to feel it because it was uncomfortable, but you have to sit with it. As Chico always said, he would say, you got to sit with it, just sit with it. And I didn't understand that. But if you sit there and listen to your body and just listen to it, just be there for it with love and grace, because these energies that we call negative, they're just misqualified energy from source. They are impersonal energies that we use and we change, and you can heal them and you can give them to your angels to heal them. And it's, so beautiful when you get help with this stuff, because you don't have to do it alone. I mean, like grounding yourself to the earth and, getting these energies down into the earth for transmuting, that helps so much.
Matt, what if you changed your approach and instead of viewing as things as negative and positive, because those two terms themselves hold a lot of charge to them. Yep. Even just saying the word negative causes your body to tense up. So if you change your perspective a little bit and see it as a lower vibration and a higher vibration, that way you're not really categorizing things as bad or evil or things you don't want. Right. They're just a different frequency of vibration. The things that people classify as negative aren't really bad. They're just a different state of being. And you can choose to be in that state of being or change your vibration into something that's a little more higher vibration, more open, and more light.
Yes. Love them and honor them while you're picking them up to change them.
Yes.
Okay, so chaps, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question. Imagine you're in a bar somewhere and some bloke's drinking a beer next to you. How are you going to say what you just said, but in human speak, so they can understand it?
I'll say it exactly the way I just said it.
Dude, you got a crying infant inside you, and just love that baby.
Right, so now...
Be a man and love that baby.
Now I'm going to ask Jim. Jim, how do you think the bloke with the beer is going to react?
Yeah, that might not work.
Okay.
But you can give it a shot, and you see if you can if there's some interest there, but if not, you just got to let it go until they're ready.
Sometimes explaining it is planting the seed, and when they are ready, that seed will germinate and blossom into
that's a possibility.
The level of knowledge they need.
Yeah, it's calibrate yourself to their level and speak to them where they can understand and try to,
don't change yourself to their level. You stay at your level, because the moment you drop down to their level, you've dropped your vibration and you aren't actually coming from truth.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah.
Yep.
So now that the bloke has looked at you very deeply and think the only spirits I'm interested in is either Jack or maybe a bit of gin. Okay. So the thing, one other way of rephrasing it might be, well, actually, here's a glass half full of beer. Is it glass half empty or glass half full? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And your perception of them can change. Yeah. So I'm just trying to give you this thing back, because when my wife was awakening and she started ahead of me, I honestly was really very, very skeptical. I'm really skeptical. I thought, frankly, she was losing it because she was hearing voices, and I thought, oh shit, schizophrenia, here we come. But the thing is that it took my awakening to really understand this differently, and something happened to me to understand it differently. And we all come at it from a different perspective. And I'm just thinking aloud. For example, I'm obviously Jewish, and it took me about another 3 lives for me to figure out this game. But the thing is that it really took a different context and a different frame of thinking for me to get into this and understand this. And if we want to get more blokes involved, leave alone try to address toxic masculinity, which is another headache in its own right. It just needs a different way of describing this and trying to figure out how we get through to them, because otherwise, it's going to take something significant like a clunk on the head or something like that to make people think. But it's just that we have an opportunity to get in there. and perhaps a different set of language and thinking skills that give us that way of thinking. And I'm just again challenging you to sort of see whether we can tease this out further, because I can tell you from my perspective, I mean, I've got some really good friends and they're all medics, well, most of them are medics. But if I talk to them about this, I tell you, they'll be ringing for the padded wagon and all the rest of it, because it would be quite a different ball game if I said to them, "Oh, by the way, I'm hearing voices, chaps," you know, and they're nice. They're actually quite nice. They're not telling me off. So it's just trying to re-engage the conversation in a different way from my clinical friends, to try to figure out how I can get the message out there. And I'm still working on it. I haven't got the answer, but I'm just thinking aloud and checking it out there, you know. So.
Yeah, well, it's like Paul William Michael Forbes, where you just love yourself and love them, and say no words until they start changing what they're doing. That's what's interesting to me, is that these people they'll start changing their activity based on what Mike was talking about, your frequency.
You know, for me, when I was back in Ontario, a lot of my old friends that I hung out with, they didn't accept me for who I was. They didn't accept my spiritual side and my energy healing practice. They would actually laugh at me if I ever talked about it. So I hid that part of me for so long just to be accepted by other people. And as soon as part of me going through my divorce, I actually took that opportunity to examine everything in my life that actually wasn't in resonance with the life I actually had the opportunity to recreate at that moment. And I actually walked away from all my friendships, everything I was engaged in that wasn't actually serving me. So, you know, and I understood it's not my job to bring people up to my level of understanding. If they want to engage in a conversation with me and have a discussion, they don't have to agree with me, but I will meet them there. But I'm typically not the one to start those conversations.
Okay.
I'll let them sort of take it if that's what they want, when they know sort of who I am and what I do.
Sure. So you see each of you, and I'm sure it's the same for all of us, had a moment of insight when suddenly the penny dropped, or the cent dropped, or something dropped, you know. So it was that made us think. Now, I'm going to just give you a quick vignette of something that happened to me. It's a really good friend of ours. He's not really related to us, but he's like a brother. Khan, you know, the sort of thing. So his mum passed away, and I went to Australia to be his best man. And there we are, sitting on this beautiful island, looking over some fabulous sea over the ocean, and he's up there in a pergola with his wife to be, surrounded by friends, and suddenly this butterfly comes in and circles around him and his bride, and then flutters off. So I said to him after, "I think that was your mum, you know," and he said, "You know, I think you're right." And it was that moment, in that flux, in that change, and he's a palliative care doctor. He's in there. He's seriously well medicalized, all that left brain thinking. But it took those little moments to get in. And if I'd gone in there talking about angels and except X, Y, Z, and he's Sikh, and if I said about Jesus, he was sort of, what? You know, that won't fly at all. Vibrations don't fly. None of that flies. But it's just that little moment where you can catch them off guard and think, oh yeah. And like my dad yesterday, he was telling me about this this lime tree. Long story short, in the Chinese New Year, the Chinese would buy certain plants and put them in the house, and then they chuck them out. So there was this lime tree which Chinese often buy and my dad was saying it looked very sad, and his workman brought it in. My dad said, "Oh, just plant it in the ground." And he said, now this lime tree is the most abundant tree in his garden. Okay, it's producing so many limes, he can't finish them. So it just popped in my head. I said, well, actually, that's the lime tree's way of saying thank you for looking after it. And he sort of, oh yeah, right. So it's those little bits, that little chinks of whatever discussion you may or may not see, which I found work. And with the greatest respect to all of you, because I've been the same when I don't talk about stuff, sometimes you just need to be a bit brave and just go out there and say, Have you thought about this? How have you felt about that? And it's a thing I just wondered whether you've observed in your own rights, but without going in heavy on the, I speak to X, Y, Z, or I can hear, or I can feel, or I can whatever. What do you think? Jim, you've been the quietest. Over to you first.
Well, usually during a conversation, I can see whether or not I usually can just feel it if the person might be open to it. And if I see that and it seems like the timing is right, I'll bring it up. I'll say, what do you think about spirituality? And I've been surprised the number of people who I've just more recently talked to them about it, and they're into it sometimes more than I am. So I'm like, wow, this is interesting. And but there's other times I bring it up and they're just not into it, and then we change it onto something else. So I don't really, I haven't really had any problems with talking to people about it, and it's been pretty easy going. And those who are into it, it's just nice to talk to people about it live, and so anytime I could find someone, it's like, ooh, good, because I could talk like hours on this stuff. It's just great.
Sure.
But I just start off gently when you're just exploring a little bit, and you see if they're open to it, and if not, I just move on. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
No biggie, because if they're not ready, they're not ready. But like I said, planted a seed maybe. But you think about it too, is sometimes if you just run into someone, you think it's random, there's a reason for it. You don't know maybe what the reason is, but that might be one of the reasons. And especially now, I would say that might be one of the big reasons, is they're wanting me to plant that seed, possibly. So that's the way I've been looking at it.
Yeah. Matt, how about you?
Well, a lot of people I deal with, we're at work, like we don't talk about anything spiritual, like not even like evangelical stuff. But occasionally I will, but that mostly I try to comfort people. I try to not magnify like I try not to engage with these old patterns that I'm in. And I think that's what Mike was telling me I need to work on is I don't need to engage in these old patterns that I'm used to dealing with people in, but to send them love and, try to make them feel better, trying to, try to shift their perspective, get them out of that energy. But Doc, if you're in the medical field, that's interesting that the medical field is where the angels and Jesus and Archangel Raphael, they're working there side by side with these people so much. And, maybe some of them have experiences eventually.
Well, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but one of the areas I worked in, I spent a lot of time, was palliative care. And it's pretty obvious there's something else going on when people approach end of life. It's just a no-brainer. Everyone knows it. They don't talk about it. And certainly as docs, we certainly don't talk about it because it's not our bag. But you're right. There are opportunities there. Yeah. Mike, how about you? Have you found any particular way in without being for people who are not open or not?
Well, I look the part with my dreadlocks and stuff like that. So people automatically assume that that's the type of person I am because of the lifestyle I live. And as soon as they find out that I do the energy work, and obviously a lot of my interaction is through our crystal shop that we have here in our house as well. So people have always just kind of assumed that I'm that type of person.
Right.
Well,
so when
you're the
people
guy.
ask me what I do, that typically opens a door, and I find out very quickly when I say, "Hey, I do energy work. I help people process their emotions and help their body to heal itself." I know right away whether or not they're going to engage in a conversation or they just turn off.
Yeah, Mike, you kind of remind me of Chico. You're the guy who I want you to hand me a smoothie when I come up and see you. And like Chico will pull out a banana or a watermelon and give it to me.
You said smoothie. I was thinking spliff. Sorry, it's a family show, folks. So you're sure we can understand.
Is it? Not anymore.
So we do have a couple questions in the comments. This one is similar to one you guys have already answered from Mary Ann. So do we want to recap, or does anyone want to address this one? Jen is asking, she desperately needs to save or rescue or be there for her son at a cost to her own mental health and emotional, or how can she be there without a cost to her own mental and emotional demise? Please help.
And this is really all pretty identical to Marianne Scott's question, because she wants, and that's the one thing that we love the women in our lives for, that they always want to rescue us and take care of us. And men, we want to fix things, and women want to nurture it and make it all better.
Nurturing does not come natural to me.
No,
what about your cat?
Right?
Don't dig yourself into a hole. It's not the one thing. Okay, there's a whole list of things, isn't there? Yeah.
One of many.
Okay.
I think Jen, for you, what you really just need to do is focus on what you need to be strong and healthy. And when you can be strong and healthy and happy within yourself, then you can actually hold space for your son. But when you are giving more of yourself than you even have for you to help fix somebody else, you are actually depleting and draining yourself of those resources you need to actually maintain health and happiness and higher vibrations within yourself. Right. All you can do is again, set those boundaries, do what you need to do to stay healthy and happy and strong. And those people in your life will either have the choice to join you on that ride or stay stuck in whatever place they're stuck in.
And that's definitely, that mirrors what happens for anyone that I've done the emotional release for. And most of the time it's because of their spouse, their kids, or something that's really traumatic that they're holding on to themselves. And all they can do is think and spend time in that space. But as they begin to love themselves and release those emotions and the attachments, and actually observe those attachments and look at what's going on through their eyes, their own eyes, the people that are affected through everyone else's lives, they're able to let go and understand it a little better. So you don't actually look at it with fear and say, I have to fix this or they're going to die. You know, we can see that that's a very low vibrational help that we want to do. If I don't feed them this soup, they're going to die. They're going to get sick and they're getting pneumonia and this is going to happen. So it's out of love, but it's so low vibrational. But when you actually kind of remove yourself from all that and say, I really am working on myself. My body is healthy. It's perfect. I don't have those attachments. And that's the energy and frequency that you're putting out that is affecting everything around you. And that is simply the law of synchronicity. It cannot be helped. It's just like the series of drummers. If you have 64 drummers that are all off beat, but one of them starts taking up a rhythm, another one's going to pick it up, another one's going to pick it up, and they're eventually all going to come into that synchronicity. So if you put your own self into synchronicity and create a beat within yourself, everyone else around you is going to follow that beat.
Jen, I just want to say too, sorry, I wanted to say that, you know, Goddess Callie is a great one to call on and like ask for help. You know, she's like super mom. Like she can help you be strong and help your son, you know, move past whatever's, you know, ailing him and help to transmute that.
And the more we also realize that whatever your son is going through is actually his journey. And it's not for us to try to change that journey. But we can be there to support and give guidance when it's asked. That was a big lesson for me, was I always tried to fix things in people and I was never asked. And every time I tried to fix something for somebody else, it actually created more problems within my life and with whatever their struggle was. So I've had to learn to step back. I know I can be of assistance to people. I can offer and let them know that this is how I can help, but they still need to come and ask me to help them. And once I get that permission, then that's kind of the gates have opened. So maybe ask your son, does he feel like he needs help? Does he feel like there's something wrong with him? And when he will acknowledge and ask for that help, that's actually him giving himself permission to heal those things.
Love that. That's beautiful,
Yeah,
Mike.
that's right on, Mike.
And I would bring that into we all have our own ways. So Matt, like, he's really good with like Kalima and a lot of the Indian mystic energy, and he works so well with it. Someone else may work with the more Dr. Joe Dispenza medical analytical type energy, and others are just like to be in. I just want to be free. I want to be open. I want to let this go. Others are in love. So you work with what works for you. So if you like to call in angels, then you call in angels for yourself. If you like to work with like goddesses and gods, then call them in. And if you just want to work on the analytical energy and just cast out love, great. You work with what works for you, but work with it yourself.
Yeah, let that all come together.
And so we have another question from Melody. And she says, I'd like to ask guidance on raising my son, who is 2, as his divine masculine.
I guess I'll jump in. I don't have kids myself, so I'm just kind of speaking off the top here. But
As a big kid.
I think one of the best things you can do is teach your son how to be emotional, and that it's okay to be emotional. Let him be angry if he's angry. But if he does or says something that is inappropriate, once he's gone through that emotion of anger, explain to him a better way of approaching it. And working with him around that, allowing him that ability to actually express fear or vulnerability and to be emotionally open. And really that's one of the key things I feel for raising young children, especially boys, is that it's safe to have emotions and to express those emotions, rather than like my generation. I'm sure the other gentlemen here, we were told to bottle it up, to suck it up. And,
yes, exactly.
My neighbor's father growing up, his way of dealing with anything is, just take a shot of whiskey and walk it off, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't always help.
Yeah. And that's a great advantage that you have, Melody, is that your son is, before he's actually developed his cognitive mind, he's not in that analytical mind yet. Right now, he's very open, and I think the base habit. Now, I can't say this for certain, but a lot of the men and little boys at least my nephew that I see, when he gets angry, he does express it, but he also turns within, which is very much a habit of men, that we turn within and we go into our cave and we just kind of, what's going on? And we try to protect ourselves with our own thoughts and feelings and trying to understand that. So being just what Mike said, I think is a great foundation to say, yeah, it's be angry, have your pity party, be cry. It's good. Okay. Let it out. Don't let it bottle up, let it out. And then we move away from the pity party. You've had your moment. Now let's shift that into something positive and loving.
And I think a lot of it too is, Melody, is you'll also have to make sure your emotions are in check and that you aren't being triggered off when your son is triggered off, right? You have to let him have his anger, have his tantrum. But the moment you start getting angry, that you aren't showing him how to handle that in an appropriate way. You have to let him have his experience, and then again have that gentle discussion with him about what was good about that experience, and maybe how to change that behavior for the better in later occurrences.
Just to mention, he's only 2, so he's got a long way to go, and it's a different ball game when he becomes a teenager. So at different stages, it's going to differ. I think you're lucky at this stage because, unlike perhaps when we were younger or we had children, if we did, the environment is more conducive to asking people about feelings and how they think and all the rest of it. The one thing I would say that I've seen to be effective, and I'll come back to this statement in a minute, is something that brings out the nurturing in a child, helps actually expose that that sentiment, those series of feelings. So be it a puppy or a pet or a tree or even a plant that they plant and they look after, something that they have to show nurturing for, that from what I've seen, exposes the child to different ways of thinking and doing things, and especially a puppy. And I have to say, boys and puppies, they just, boys and dogs, there is something very special that goes on when they have a dog and it's their dog. And I saw it with my son. Obviously, my daughters love their dog as well, but there was really something very special in the bonding that goes on between a boy and their dog. The other thing which I mentioned earlier on was, as parents, we're very often and very easily go into the "I told you" or "I'm telling you this" mode of thinking, and certainly for us with our son, who's the oldest, it was very much telling him, "Okay, you didn't get good grades. What are you going to do about it, or how are you going to change?" But with the girls that came later, and it shifted as we went through each of the subsequent children, I actually just said, "Look, what have you learned? There's actually nothing wrong in getting it wrong or not working out, but what have you learned?" And that produced a different sort of discussion. And they very often went onto a different mode of thinking and not being defensive. And that for me is something that I wish I'd known earlier, because it certainly opens up a lot more conversations now in a way that I wouldn't have anticipated as before.
Did you actually get a response back from a 2-year-old that might not have that analytical brain in place yet?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a pediatrician, but I'm sure every parent knows that they can read to a certain extent, especially mums, what their kids are thinking and doing and saying because of their verbal and non-verbal behavior. Rachel, over to you.
I have a 2-year-old, so I can answer for you. They're very much like emotion based, and they don't have the ability to reason through their emotions, but they can feel your emotions as if they're their emotions. So as a parent, however you respond to them is how they're going to feel about that themselves. So you have to respond compassionately or in a way that, is going to help calm them down or whatever it is. Like, because with 2-year-olds, it's really just, I want this, I want it now. Like, that's the extent of problems with 2-year-olds. So it's just mirroring like the feeling that you want them to vibrate on is essentially or match. And it might take a minute to calm them down depending on what that is, but how upset they are. But yeah, that's it. And just be towards them the way you want them to be towards you. And the more you mirror, serve as that kind of mirror for them, they'll just reflect back to you exactly your feelings and your moods and all of that in a positive way. And then they'll start speaking more about their emotions, like, well, because you can use words to help them identify their emotions. Oh, you're mad right now, or you're frustrated because you can't have that, or whatever. You can explain it to them. It's like giving them the program that their brain is now going to use to express that in the future for them. If that makes sense. Like, so yeah, there's a lot you can do.
And our expression of emotions shouldn't last any longer than 90 seconds. If we have an emotional reaction that lasts longer than 90 seconds, it's because we're holding on to it and we're not allowing ourselves to release that energy. The word emotion itself means energy in motion. So when people aren't allowing those emotions to actually move through them, then they're holding on to them and harboring them. And that's where we start to develop a lot of issues, not only in behavior, but it can also manifest later on in life as other various symptoms in the physical body.
Yeah, like you don't want to attach your identity to the emotion itself. It's like the weather. It's just energy. It's just coming in and it's going to go out. And so I use that language with my kids too when I describe. I just describe everything as energy with my kids because that seems to be a neutral thing, and that they don't like get attached to, oh, it's just, we're feeling this energy right now. It feels like this and it's going to pass, and just allow it to be. And so it neutralizes that force, and then they don't like take it on as like, oh, I'm bad because this feeling, and that feeling is supposed to be bad. And let's just change the energy is what I say. what can we do to change the energy? Like
you're teaching them non-attachment already.
Yeah.
So again, if I could just reel back a bit, or as you would say, back up a bit, Americanisms. Anyway, the main thing is that you're using, instead of a direct way of describing or talking about something, a slightly indirect way of doing it. Okay, and similarly with the chaps, instead of directly saying, "Oh, I think that might be a mum, she's an angel," sort of thing, which is what came in my mind when this butterfly flew around. You could say, well, some people might say that's an angel. Mm-hmm. It's not me. Mm-hmm. Or I've heard somebody tell me in the past, this is this. And the most recent one I've had is when I went to a funeral and I was channeling it was desperately sad. 22-year-old lad, just finished university, died of cancer within about 3 months of the diagnosis. Parents are bereft. But the boy was channeling. I was channeling the boy during the service, and he gave me some messages for his parents. I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to tell them this? Because it's such an emotionally charged day. So I said to the parents, I had a dream, and your boy came to me in the dream. And then people actually are more accepting of the frame of thinking as a dream, because it's slightly distant. It's not you telling them, and they took it in. And they took it. In fact, one of the messages the boy gave was spot on in terms of something he told his dad. I didn't know about this. It just came out. But it's just that sometimes if you stand back a little bit and find a different way in, if I could use Khan, something like a roundhouse kick, you don't expect the attack from the front; it comes from the side. Okay. It's a different way of connecting, maybe even more violently at the same time. But the thing is that you find a way in using a different metaphor, using different language, and depending on the context. And sometimes, just sometimes, it just opens up the discussion. And to my mind, and I think the opportunity is that we can go for the lumpen proletariat as well with these sorts of ideas, to say, yeah, let's try it differently, And so little girls are brought up with books perhaps on fairies. There's a lot of that stuff around. That's great. And when you see a fairy ring, you can, as I did with my youngest, I said, look, there's the fairy ring. And she used to read all these fairy books, and then suddenly everything just exploded. And so everything is an opportunity to change. And I've sort of become more brave personally, and perhaps in our own ways, in our own realms, our own ways of doing things, there is that opportunity there to even think it further than that. Because yes, we could have been and are probably still seen as a bit nutty by some people, but unlike Joan of Arc, we're not going to be burnt at the stake. We're just going to be marginalized and say, okay, we just go off and talk about something else, so it should be okay.
We would hope so.
Yeah.
I think Melody as well. One of the best things you can do for your son is to not squash his imagination and let his imagination run wherever it wants to run. As long as he's not causing harm to anybody else. My parents always gave me lots of freedom in my life. They may not have understood who I was or what I was becoming or what I was learning about, but I always say my parents, it was like I was on a fishing line, and they'd let me go out into the world and have my experiences, make my mistakes, face my challenges. But if I got too far out of line, they'd just reel me back in, reset me, and let me go again. And because of that, I also tell people all the time is I believe magic is real. Therefore, I see magic every day of my life in everything I do. So as soon as you start to squash that imagination and that connection to the magic that is out there in life, that's when you start to put a lot of limitations and boundaries that aren't actually helpful on your kids.
And I'd like to say something too, kind of goes along with what Mike is saying, because I just realized I'm like, well, I have a daughter. I don't have sons. I have 3 girls, so I don't have that experience of raising a son, but I do have nephews. And so I feel like, it made me realize gender doesn't really matter at that age. It's just about teaching them like how to be one with themselves, how to be aware of what they're feeling and thinking and observing all of that. So yeah, it's kind of going off of like, there's really no boundaries there. Like even sometimes we put boundaries on them, like with gender and things like that. But really, it's just be who you want to be. That's it. Like whoever you want to be, you can be anyone. We think about Freddie Mercury and David Bowie. Let's talk about, there's a lot of men that express themselves very openly and in many different forms and ways, and they change it up all the time. And there's really no right or wrong way to be in those terms, but just to be aware, I think, is the most, and unique to you is really also the true essence. And that goes back to what Mike said in the beginning as well. So, but I do realize that we're kind of winding down here with time. So does anyone have any last words on the panel that from you?
Yeah, I'd like to post a question to our panel, to Mike, Matt, and Jim. And what's the one piece of advice that you would give to a male that is awakening? So, Mike, I'll start with you. If you have one piece of advice that you would
come back to me. I need to sit with that one for.
All right.
Self-compassion, forgiveness, love yourself, listen to your feelings, just listen to them and let them discharge.
I think it applies to everyone. The spirit is working through everyone, and there are no fears, there's no worries, no anger. Just think about love and fun, and for me, I think that just applies to everyone.
It's well, as Con said at the beginning, it's all about learning to listen to your heart and let the heart be your guide and your compass. So a simple thing to do is sometimes if you're worked up, just take a couple slow, deep breaths and bring your awareness into your heart, and then ask yourself a question around the situation you're stuck in. But always make sure that question is framed in a yes or no type question, and then see what the heart says. If you ask a question and your body starts to tense up, that's a sign that is not the right direction for you to go. But if you remain open and fluid and in those higher vibrations, then learn to trust that and follow that, even though intellectually it might not sound like the best idea. When we follow our heart, it always leads us to greater opportunity and chances. And don't be afraid to cry.
Yeah.
I think I've had my fair share of crying on YouTube and Instagram, and people have seen me bawl out, and there's nothing wrong with that emotion of sharing.
Nothing at all.
That's right.
When I went through a big awakening, one of the many awakenings in my life, it was through my divorce. And I never cried before, but I'd be walking down the street happy as ever, and all of a sudden the tears would just start flowing. And I just learned to accept it and let it flow. And I could care less who saw me, where I was, what I was doing. I just allowed myself to be in that emotion because that's what needed to happen right then and there.
Bravo, Brother Mike.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, more men need to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to hold on to those emotions. And actually, Con and Rachel have some good YouTube videos about emotional release, but it's trying not to get there in the first place is by releasing them as Mike's saying, as they're coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this was a great show.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
This is wonderful.
This is great. I really do thank you all. Christy, why don't you take us out and let's go through each one.
Thank you guys for being here. Gosh, I just haven't had a chance to say anything, but I'm so grateful that you're here. And I know we like to do the feminine and the masculine thing, but in reality, we're all one. And for you guys to come here and talk about everything that you've talked about is really bringing it to the point to all of us that how similar we really are. And these steps that we go through is pretty much the same thing. And we all have been there too. So it's a lot of the things that you guys talked about is not exclusive to men. We go through that too. And to see you guys express yourself and to see that you guys are going through that too, it really helps us as well. And I'm sure Jenny and Rachel can agree with me on that, because it's just like so many things you said. I was just like, wow, So thank you guys for opening up and being here for all of us today. Really, all of us are so grateful for you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So I want to invite all of you guys to watch our show next week. We are going to have Rita back, and she's talking about the equinox and the spring cleaning. And talk about kind of why we do spring cleaning, and now is really the best time. A lot of people make New Year's resolutions on New Year's, but I think the spring is really the best time to make your New Year resolution, because everything is new and fresh and blooming, and so yeah. And I want to see if I've got a little bit of feedback. Sorry. Con, I'm just going to go across and see who has what going on. If you want to say anything about what you got coming up.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, tomorrow, Rachel and I are up on her private Facebook page, and we are going to be doing a practice session with our sensing and mediumship skills. That will be tomorrow. And then, of course, this Friday on my own channel, we're going to be doing Channeling Eric and Friends, where I'll be providing intuitive guidance and messages from anyone that you want to connect with, your guides, your spirits, your past loved ones, whoever it might be. So that's what's going on with me.
Awesome. Rachel?
Yeah, so what Con said about the mediumship practice tomorrow, and that's every Thursday at 12:30 Eastern. And then no other live events for me coming up. I do have a new page, though, I want to talk about. It's I just signed up with Patreon, and I created a site on there, and I'm going to start sharing more content through that site. And it's basically it's going to have like a lot of my videos and the things like the energy updates and different channelings that I do. It's a way of, well, to explain it, it's like it's not, you can sign up, but you donate like a very minimal amount, like $2 a month, to kind of just support the work that I'm doing. So it's a platform for artists who are receive donations to support their work. And so it'd be really helpful to keep doing what I'm doing and to do it ad-free and all of that stuff. So yeah, so go there if you're interested. And there will be some things I do on there that will be exclusive to Patreon members. So that's another incentive. But I'll post more about that.
I want to say I've used Patreon for a long time. It's so much fun. It's easy to sign up, guys. And I'm already on there on Rachel's page, and I can't wait because it's going to be super high vibrational, and she's going to take it to the next level. And hope you guys will join us over there.
Thank you, Matt.
Awesome. Yay, Rachel. That's awesome. Something new to do too.
Yeah.
Yay. Jenny, what about you? You got something going on?
I will have a new meditation coming up this week on my YouTube channel, and I am also doing remote energy healing online now, and you can contact me through the information at the bottom of our page.
Awesome.
Check the description.
Yeah,
down in the description.
Doc, you got anything?
We've got lots of business going on at home, but the thing I will be doing is finally uploading my first video onto YouTube, and hopefully linking it in with. Thank you. Lights, camera, action, cut. There's a lot of cutting, I can assure you. But the other thing is, I think I'll be able to hook it up to TikTok as well. So I might be So if you see any odd
All right, Doc
outtakes
on TikTok.
or anything else, just yeah,
Wow.
yeah, but no dancing, Mats. No dancing these days. Okay, so yeah, that's about it, really. Looking forward to next week, obviously, with Rita.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Yay. Doc on TikTok. Yay.
Yeah, well, the problem is TikTok just eats your time. You know, I mean, I reckon they call it TikTok because time just vanishes when you're on it. So it's an absolute nightmare.
And I'm just going to bring it over to. Oh, sorry, Christy.
I think I'm going to do Equinox Energy coming in video, and I may do another meditation video, but I haven't got to the. I'm still want to do the 2-2 energies because there's a whole thing that has like been coming to me over it's like the year, space of this whole year, and so I still have been getting like little pieces that I want to include in that. So I haven't put the video out yet. And I think it's because March is an odd month. And so April is an even month. And so that's the 4, which is 2 2s. And so that's whole part of the whole thing that I'm going to be discussing on the video. So I think it's kind of why it hasn't come together yet from March. It's not meant to come out till April. So I figured that out too, because I'm like, what is going on with this? But it's like I can't get these bits and pieces of stuff that needs to be included. So I'm just like, okay, it'll just come out when it's ready. When it's supposed to, that's when it'll be. So I'm not stressing about it.
Yeah, just go with the flow.
Yeah.
It always ends up being divine timing.
No dancing, no.
We need that. We really need that, guys.
That would be great.
Maybe there's a hint there, guys. The reason why you guys, we came on today. They're drawing your awareness. You gotta go with your awareness is being drawn. All right.
So I just want to ask one last question. Jim, is there any way that people can get in contact with you if they want to?
I don't have anything set up right now. I'm trying to think of a video I'm going to put together, and hopefully a few months from now we'll get a video out. So we're just getting started here. So we're winding up.
Looking forward to that. And how about you, Matt?
I have a YouTube channel that I occasionally post videos on. Also, I want to ask everybody to like Alyssa Watling's page. Alyssa Watling Intuitive. I got a reading from her, and it was just so amazing. I mean, she has like written readings. She'll meet with you live. She does all kinds of stuff, but it was really mind blowing. And then William Michael Forbes 102 course is coming up, and Christy's a teacher. Jenny's in there, Colin, and everybody who can join us there.
We'll be there. Beautiful. Love that.
And I want to thank Jim and Brother Mike and Doc for coming on today. It was priceless. Thank you.
And Mr. Mike Borgh, yourself, buddy.
Well, so I do run a healing practice. So I do in-person and distance sessions, and I work with people all over the world. So you can see my schedule there on the link that Con has shown. I'm also have recently set up a YouTube page where I'll be doing lots of talks on different topics around spirituality and energy work. And if any of you are in the New Brunswick area, I will be teaching some courses on energy work in the next couple weeks here in Sussex, New Brunswick. And if anyone's interested in sort of an advanced energy work mentorship program, I do offer a 14-week program, which is basically a distillation of the training I've experienced. I've gotten rid of all the fuzz and fluff that really has no place and didn't really bring about change, and really have expanded on the training I have. And I work with you to help you find your own path through the energy work and find what works for you by sharing my knowledge and my experience. So you can reach out to me through my website if you have any questions about that.
So awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Super exciting.
Okay,
Well, folks,
guys.
Well,
I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
to break up this great
Guess you have to say bye.
thing we got going. Yeah, we could just do this all day.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. We have links listed below, and we hope to see you next week.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Thank you.
guys.
Fine.
Much
Cheerio.
love.